Would you like to be somebody who understands why greeting people on the street is good for you and for other people? Then listen to this entire video where I explain how when you say hello to people, when you walk past them, or simply just smile at them, then you feel like you are included and you trust strangers more. And that's very good for your mental health specifically. So before we get into this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, and how to reduce suffering in life. Let's get into it. So I used to live in Switzerland, where you always greet people when you walk past them, and I lived in the mountains you'd specifically do that there. And I also started playing golf at a golf club here in Germany, and you always greet one another when walking past or seeing each other at the golf course, no matter if they're a stranger. So, and I was thinking about it, and I realized when I walk past people here on the street in Germany and I don't say hello to them, there's something bad about it. Because when I walk past people, you tend to avoid eye contact, so you don't sort of say anything to each other. You kind of ignore each other. And there are big downsides to that, I think. First of all, you give up the opportunity to interact with one another. And human interaction is very important for, I believe, your sort of a mental kind of calmness and to reduce sort of your like neuroticism, because you're biologically primed to want to interact with others. You're a very social being, and nowadays it's quite easy to avoid a lot of social interactions and actually not interact with people at all. And that, I think, is deleterious to your mental health and just the vibe you have in your thoughts, whether whether positive or negative emotions. That's one thing. I think you become more distrustful of other people, whether you're conscious of it or not, because when you're walking past people and ignoring them, what you're doing there is you are basically, what's happening unconsciously is like, okay, this person, I don't trust them. Like, I'm not going to acknowledge their existence. I'm going to act like they're not there because they must be a danger. Like, if you knew this person, you'd obviously say hello to them because you like them and you want to talk to them. But if you don't do that, you automatically categorize this person as somebody who's maybe a threat to you, who's somebody who's irrelevant to your existence, which is actually incorrect. No matter who it is. I think almost all people are relevant to your existence, or essentially everybody is. And also, we have, because as I said, we're social beings, our evolution has, we've developed this, across evolution, this skill to detect whether we are being included or excluded from groups, because that depends, our survival depends on group inclusion or exclusion. You know, if you're ostracized, you become lonely and you die earlier, sort of, yeah. And if you're included, you get access to resources and trade with one another and emotional resources, and you survive. So you are primed to have a very fine-tuned detection system for if you're being included or excluded. So when you're walking past somebody and somebody ignores you, it's this kind of air gaze, where they just sort of look right through you or act like you're not there. They ignore your existence, and that you still interpret that as a kind of like you're not valuable, or you interpret it as something's wrong with you. I think unconsciously, if you're not conscious of it, obviously. And that's not good. And it just generally, I think it makes you more lonely if you don't talk to people. Or let's say the opportunity cost of ignoring people and not talking to them on the street is very high. And it would bring you a lot of sort of pleasure and a reduction in neuroticism. Whereas, yeah, if you ignore people, you're just more, you feel detached from people. And that's not good. I think generally, if you repeat this avoidance interaction, like avoid that interaction with people, you ingrain a bias against strangers. Sort of, you group all strangers into an out group, and the barrier between you and strangers as time progresses, it balloons, and you build an ever-growing obstacle to interact with them, genuinely interact with strangers. And obviously, you know, the barrier is not enormous. You know, if somebody comes to talk to you, if you're a relatively well socially integrated human being and somebody then comes to talk to you as a stranger, you're still going to be able to reply to them and talk to them. But I think the probability of you making that first move interaction to like initiating the interaction is a lot lower if you practice ignoring people and not saying hello to them on the street, and which is essentially how most people behave in Germany. Yeah. So let's talk about the benefits of greeting people on the street. So you begin to build trust in your community when you say hello to one another, because you start to build some sort of a human connection with them. And I think that helps with solidarity, you know, if you are in need of something in a community. And I think that's what communities are originally for. They're essentially kind of like tribes, and tribes help within the individuals within the tribe help one another survive. And when you greet each other, people in the street, you sort of save these people in your, you know, mental contact list as people who are friendly, who you can interact with, and who you can exchange with, and help, and who you can ask for help. And I think that's super important. Not necessarily that you actually go and ask for help then, but just like consciously knowing you have the opportunity to get help from people if you need it. I think that's brings you a lot of peace within yourself. And again, then, if you start to build trust in other people because you are able to interact with them and they interact genuinely back to you, you also start to build a trust in humanity in general, because you can't, I mean, we're not really able to grasp what humanity is, you know, with our limited brain capacity. I mean, you can't really imagine what 7 billion people look like, but you can understand what your community is. And I would say humanity is an abstraction of your community, because you see, okay, this is what my community looks like, this is what humans look like, then humanity must look like this also. So you start to build a faith in humanity, which I think is very potent and what people really need in today's nihilistic, like prevalently nihilistic society. Also, you practice small talk. Now, I always used to be a hater of small talk. I didn't like it. I thought it was superficial, but I've grown to actually quite like it, because it is it's innocent, it is cheery, and, you know, you not necessarily like you need to have a long conversation, but, you know, you talk to somebody and then they sort of, you know, mention something small, something that maybe a little bit funny, and then you sort of throw something back at them and you go here and there. And I realized that actually reduces my neuroticism. It reduces my sensitivity to stress factors in my environment. I feel more relaxed when I do that. I feel good about myself. I feel like I've grown, actually, because I've gotten out of my comfort zone and talked to somebody I don't know, a stranger. And that makes me feel, it brings me positive emotions, period. Yeah, and I think there's also, but I'm sure, I mean, I don't know the science, the literature on it or anything, but I can imagine that because we have evolved to interact with people and because our survival depends on it, there will be some sort of neurological or chemical loop, like function in your brain that releases a feel-good hormone, for example, when you interact with other people. So it'll make you feel good, very simply, if you talk to or say hello or smile to people. Yeah. And I think this is actually the reason why I wanted to make this video, because this is the most important factor. I think when you say hello to people on the street or interact with people in your community, you feel watched, observed by others. But more specifically, not in sort of a finger, somebody's pointing a finger at you, but more as in you feel included in a group, like your existence is being acknowledged. And when you're included in a group and people are looking at you and interacting with you, you care more about your behavior. You abandon abominable conduct and try and adopt noble conduct, because you feel like, well, if I behave badly, I will be judged by people and I won't be included in a group. And of course, that is sort of you're kind of avoiding pain, or you're avoiding the risk of being ostracized. But it's more as in, you feel like you're part of a group and you want to help that group and nurture it, not destroy it with bad behavior. I think that's what it is. Like, and that's not even a sort of, I need to be moral, I need to be ethical. It's actually more of like an intrinsic motivation. You actually want to behave nobly towards the people in your community. So it really comes from within when you talk to the people around you, and you feel like it's more, your community depends on your contribution on your behavior. I would put it like that. And you have that a lot less if you ignore people on the street, if you don't say hello to them, if you feel disconnected, detached from the people around you. You have that less. You feel like, well, it doesn't matter how I behave. They don't know me. They're not connected to me. It won't affect them. But it will affect them. You're just not aware of it. But just if you're in the proximity of other people and you talk to them, then it's more obvious that you are affecting them, and then you focus more on behaving well. So in conclusion, greeting people on the street, I think, is an excellent tradition that we should really encourage, because it makes you feel good, like mentally, because you feel included in a community. It encourages like ethical conduct, because you feel like you're contributing to your community and your community depends on you. You are a pillar in your community. You start to trust people, which then sort of you can extrapolate itself, and you begin to trust humanity in general then, which is really important, and I would say one of the antidotes to nihilism nowadays. Yeah, so please leave a comment below whether you agree with me that greeting people on the street is good, or whether you think it's actually bad, it's unnecessary, and what are sort of practical ways we can try and encourage communicating or greeting people on the street, smiling at one another. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, and how to reduce suffering in life. Thank you for listening.